If I was to ask you what thoughts the color gold invokes in your mind, you'd probably tell me treasure. And I could not fault you for it. We as humans have a habit of forming associations between things and concepts that don't necessarily share a relationship. And when these our beliefs become generally accepted, later generations ends up taking them as fundamental facts of existence rather than what they are, which is just popular opinion. With this video, I and my esteemed co-host, Juan Eric, are going to look at the various beliefs mankind has linked to certain colors. Black. Black is often associated with power, authority, and elegance. It's a color commonly used to invoke mystery and allure. One needs to only turn back the wheel of time and you would find countless tales of people adorning themselves in the color. Everyone from revolutionary thinker Karl Marx to Virgin Queen Elizabeth I to the first president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, wore black in pivotal moments of their lives. Usage of the color is not only linked to individuals history looks favorably on. As one of the major paramilitary organizations of Nazi Germany, the SS, was well known for its striking and intimidating black uniforms, designed by Hugo Boss and Karl Debschit. This uniform was intended to project an image of authority and ruthlessness. During that same period in history, in Italy, under Benito Mussolini, had its own violent fascist organization known as the Voluntary Militia for National Security, known more commonly as the Black Shirts. They adopted black shirts as their distinctive uniform, which became a powerful symbol of their movement and their often violent tactics. In many cases, the color black has been deliberately chosen by individuals or groups to project an image of power, seriousness, and determination, which can be intimidating to others, and that has led to the often negative reputation the color has. It's become so prevalent in our society that 9 times out of 10 in a story, the guy wearing nothing but black is evil. That's not to say that a character dressed from head to toe in black is always evil. Look at Batman. Everyone knows the iconic Dark Knight, and he toes the line between the quote and unquote good and bad sides of the color perfectly. I said it like that because in actuality, there's no good or bad side to black. Whatever emotions invoked by the color are sometimes our own beliefs being played out in our minds, or in most cases, what we've been taught to believe. Stick with me on this. If you grew up in most parts of Africa, Europe, or the Americas, you probably think black symbolizes death, but that's just what the culture you were born in taught you to believe. But like a fish in a bowl, you can't even fathom anything beyond what you know. Who says black means death? The ancient Egyptians didn't think so. To them, it represented fertility and rebirth, as it was associated with the rich soil of the Nile Delta. The Egyptians believed that the black silt left behind by the annual flooding of the Nile River brought new life and prosperity to their land. This association with fertility made black a revered color in Egyptian culture. I'm sure you might say, okay, but that's just in one place, right? Certainly the majority of humanity has seen black for the force of evil it is. And I say to you, let's take a trip to China. The Chinese linked it to the element of water and believed it brought good fortune. The Chinese observed that water, when still calm, reflected a deep black color. This observation led to the belief that black has a harmonizing effect and could bring balance and luck to one's life. Black was often used in traditional Chinese calligraphy and artwork to represent the depth and mystery of water. So, as a species, we collectively owe black an apology for all the bad PR we've run on it. Yes, it's a bold color, but boldness is literally what makes our lives enjoyable. Without it, the gardens of our souls would have no green.
Green is the color that most of us associate with nature. What good would gardens and forests be without it? Or, more precisely, without the chemical responsible for their green pigment, chlorophyll, which they use to convert sunlight into energy. By the way, do you have a green thumb or not? And let's say, if you found yourself in a video game with low HP, would you rather drink a green potion or a red one? I imagine most of us would go with the safer first option. But I also have another question. Do we cross the street when the traffic light says green or red? I'm aware some places use blue light to indicate go. But that doesn't change the fact that green is a symbol of wellness, health, life, youth, energy. No wonder the Romans used it for Venus, the goddess of gardens, vegetables and vineyards. No surprise, green is the color of nearly all Islamic flags, as a representation of heaven's lush landscapes. In ancient Eastern landscapes, interestingly, green and blue used to share the same character Qing in Mandarin, or Ao in Japanese. In fact, only modern European languages call green the hue evoked by light with a wavelength between roughly 495 570 nanometers. Many other cultures prefer, or at least used to prefer, different terms for the ranges between 450-530 nanometers, blue-green in the spectrum, and 530-590 nanometers, green-yellow. You might wonder, what's all this blubberish about? Well, remember the traffic light question from a few minutes ago? All I'm trying to do is share a little fun fact. Hear me out. In modern Japanese, the character for green has changed to midori, while the old term for blue-green, ao, now means just blue. And yet, even if in Japan traffic lights share the same color as other countries, the green light is still described using the character ao, which, as we said, nowadays only means blue. It's a beautiful reflection of the absence of a linguistical distinction between blue and green in Old Japanese. Let's remain in the far past for a bit longer, but move back to west direction, specifically to Egypt. Here, as the symbol of regeneration and rebirth, green was associated with the crops made possible by the annual flooding of the Nile, while Osiris, the ruler of the underworld, used to be portrayed with a green face, and facial makeup of the same color was even worn by both the living and the dead around the eyes as a protection from evil. Skipping a few millennia ahead, in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, colors could symbolize one's belonging to a particular class. Red could in fact be worn only by the nobility, brown and grey by peasants, while green by merchants, bankers, and the gentry, as shown by the Mona Lisa's wealthy green. A few centuries after, during the Industrial Revolution, green contrasted the oppressive greys and blacks through Romanticism. Goethe declared it the most restful color, while painters praised nature by depicting the lush green of rural landscapes and forests. Furthermore, in Victorian England, green was associated with homosexuality, and it was Oscar Wilde to popularize it by having homosexual men wear a green carnation to represent it. Color's history with sexuality is also part of Persian and Sudanese poetry, in which dark-skinned women, called green women, were considered erotic. In all honesty, green hasn't always been the most positive color. Look no further than the serpent in the Garden of Eden. But if we wanted to look further, then we'd have to mention how, even if in folktales fairies have often been portrayed green, on the other hand, monsters and the very devil have too, like in the 15th century's painting Saint Wolfgang and the Devil by Michael Pacha. True that dragons have usually been shown green in Western culture, like most reptiles, but modern Chinese ones are, though the same color and, unlike their European counterparts, benevolent, as great symbols of power, strength, and good luck. so much that the very Emperor of China would use them as icons too. In the late 19th century, following the study of color theory, and particularly how complementary colors like red and green reinforced each other together, Vincent van Gogh said, describing his painting Midnight Café to his brother Theo, "I sought to express with red and green the terrible human passions. The whole is blood red and pale yellow, with the green billiard table in the center, and 4 lamps of lemon yellow, with rays of orange and green. Everywhere it is a battle and antithesis of the most different reds and greens." Continuing on with its negative meanings, in Chinese, the term for cuckold is to wear a green hat, because in ancient times, prostitutes were called the family of the Green Lantern, and a prostitute's family would wear a green headscarf. Most commonly associated with toxicity, disgust, and poison, green is also the color of envy. Shakespeare used it in The Merchant of Venice, speaking of green-eyed jealousy. And in theater and cinema, besides the current abundant use of green screen for visual effects, the color has also been connected with the inhuman. In the poster for the 1935 film The Bride of Frankenstein, the monster had a green face. Moreover, actor Bela Lugosi wore green-hued makeup for the role of Dracula in the 1927 Broadway production. Remember what color the Hulk is? So, though a brightening color, green does not lack shades of darkness in its historical gradations. The question is if they are obscuring enough to stain its whitening purity.
White impurity, huh? Sounds a bit like a certain extremist hate group. The Ku Klux Klan, or the KKK, is an American white supremacist far-right hate group with a long history of employing terrorism and violence to promote its agenda. The organization is known for its distinct white robes, which they use to symbolize the purity of the white race and the righteousness of the Klan's white supremacist ideology. The eerie and menacing appearance of the masked, robed figures under the cover of darkness was designed to create a climate of terror and psychological warfare against their victims. As in the Klan's first iteration, after the American Civil War, members' varied costumes were sometimes described as attempts to pose as the ghosts of Confederate soldiers, using the then popular folklore to terrify newly freed African Americans and their allies. As with most extremist groups, their ideology is tied to religion, as they viewed themselves as the defenders of the Protestant Christian faith, with the color white tying into Christian religious ideas of purity. All of this doesn't mean the quote and unquote purity associated with the color white is inherently racial, as that would be a lie. If we take a trip to my homeland of Nigeria, in Igbo culture, white, known as Ocha, symbolizes purity, peace, wisdom, and a clean heart, often represented by white chalk, known as Nzu, which is used for spiritual and medicinal purposes. It signifies purity and connection to the spirit world, while white cloths, known as Akwacha, also represents purity in contemporary times. Nzu remains relevant despite the influence of Western culture and Christianity. Due to this, many Igbo Christians incorporate Nzu into their practices, such as using it during naming ceremonies or funerals to honor the ancestors. Speaking of Christianity, in the Christian faith, during the transfiguration of Jesus Christ, his clothes changed to white, symbolizing his divine nature. The ancient Mesopotamians also associated the color with divinity. Many records from this period describe how the walls of the great priest kings' homes were painted white with gypsum. The homes of Mesopotamian nobility once the only structures covered in this revered color. One only needs to take a trip to Egypt, as most people have heard about the Great Pyramid, but what's less well known is that it was originally covered in about 5.5 million tons of white limestone, and the rough step-like structure we now associate with pyramids were absent at the time. The limestone was fit to the pyramid step to create a smooth surface that shone a brilliant white under the hot Egyptian sun. This was far from abnormal either. Most of the ancient Egyptian pyramids were white, but over time, the elements and humans would strip the limestone away. But for a time, the Egyptian landscape was lit up by these monumental white pyramids. The Egyptians sought this color scheme for good reason. They associated the color white with purity, omnipotence, and the sacred. We've seen white being used as a herald of misguided racial superiority, a medium for spirituality, and a symbol of divinity. A theme that seems to surround the color is its association with the otherworldly, and that is evident in Japanese tradition, as white is the color that is associated with death and passing. This view of the color through the lens of death can also be found in the anime Bleach by Tite Kubo. Kubo himself has admitted that he initially wanted to name the series White or Black, but found them too simple, settling on Bleach as a more evocative word for white that also alluded to soul cleansing. White itself also appears as a specific entity, an experimental creature crucial to our hero's origin. With all that being said, we should not allow all this talk of death make us sad. It is no reason to stay blue.
Alright then, let's cheer up. Know the sky and the sea? So, they are basically blue because of an optical effect known as Rayleigh scattering. When passing through the atmosphere, the sunlight's blue wavelengths are spread more widely by the oxygen and nitrogen molecules, resulting in more blue reaching our eyes. And the same phenomenon occurs with the sea. The water absorbs the longer wavelengths of red while reflecting and scattering blue. But it's also true that the sky's color affects the seas. In general, the further an object, the bluer it appears, which is why looking at the ends of the sea makes it appear darker than it actually is. This is the so-called aerial perspective. According to Leonardo da Vinci's studies, faraway objects blend with their background color, which usually happens to be blue. Speaking of another optical effect, did you know that blue eyes do not actually contain any blue pigment? This is known as the Tyndall effect. Blue eyes' irises contain in fact less dark melanin, which consequently absorbs less short wavelength blue light, while reflecting it back out to the viewer. In Germany, about 75% of the population has blue eyes, while in Estonia, 99%. Not sure if I've done a good job at putting a smile on your face by explaining how those blues are fake, but trust me, it only goes up from here. We can start by busting a wrong myth. Contrary to popular belief, blue is indeed present in nature. From plants and flowers like the morning glory and the blue delphinium to animals like morpho butterflies, the mandarin fish, and so on. Taking a look at history, blue has commonly been associated with harmony, masculinity, after World War II, knowledge, intelligence, calmness, infinity, imagination, and sadness. In ancient Egypt, it was also the color of the divinity. It was said that the god Amun could turn his skin blue to fly unseen in the sky, and the same color, serving as a decoration for tombs and funeral objects, was believed to protect the dead in the afterlife. But blue as an ornament could also be found in the bricks making up the Ishtar Gate of ancient Babylon, or on the faces of Celts and Germans. Julius Caesar reported that these barbarians dyed their faces blue to frighten the enemy, and tinted their hair the same color once old. According to Vitruvius, the Romans made dark blue pigment from indigo, which used to be imported by Greeks from India, while also trading Egyptian blue pigment. The walls of Roman villas in Pompeii had frescoes of blue skies, and blue pigments were found in the shops of color merchants. Before the 18th century, blue colorants for artwork were mainly based on lapis lazuli, mined in Afghanistan, whose mountains were visited by Marco Polo in 1217. We still have his report. Quote, "Here is found a high mountain from which they extract the finest and most beautiful of blues." End quote. He spoke of the mineral ultramarine, obtained by grinding lapis lazuli into an extremely expensive powder, which stayed the finest available blue pigment throughout all the Middle Ages. Surprisingly enough, in the early Middle Ages European culture, blue could hardly be found, if not on the poorest clothes made with modest quality dyes. In fact, red and purple were reserved to the noble, and neither churches nor kings would decorate themselves blue. This all changed in the 12th century in Paris, when stained glass windows, colored with cobalt, made their appearance. Shortly after, King Louis IX of France began to regularly dress in blue. Even paintings of the mythical King Arthur started to show him in the same color. The nobles quickly followed the royals, and so did the church, which dictated to reserve blue for the robes of the Virgin Mary, ultramarine blue that is, which began to be associated with holiness, humility, and virtue. An expanding industry for the manufacture of fine blue and white pottery began in those centuries in China, whose porcelain, firstly made for the family of the emperor, would soon be exported around the world, with designs adapted to European tastes. But it would only be with the discovery of Prussian blue from experiments involving heating dried blood with iron sulfides that the color, starting from the 1820s, would see even larger use and find through the port of Nagasaki its fortune in Japan, where it took the place of the traditional and short-lasting blue pigment made from dayflower. It was Prussian blue, the one used by Hokusai in his famous wave paintings. The second half of the 19th century saw the redesign of blue jeans by Jacob Davis and Levi Strauss, a once popular worker's costume, originally fabricated in the city of Genoa. Bleu de Gênes, the French used to call it, wrongly pronounced jeans in English, though, as fate would have it, the mispronunciation eventually replaced the correct one. In the same century and onward, artists like Picasso, Kandinsky, and Der Blaue Reiter school would use the color plentifully. Matisse once said, talking about it, that a certain blue penetrates your soul. If, on one hand, because of its association with harmony, blue was chosen as the color of the flags of the United Nations and European Union, international organizations that were built to preserve peace, on the other hand, dark blue historically became a common color for military uniforms. And do you know what color we'd get by making blue even darker? Purple.
As a once royal color, purple symbolizes power, spirituality, luxury, wealth, and nobility. Being the love child of red and blue, it is known for the combination of red's power and blue's stability. So famed was purple's ties to royalty and power that one of history's greatest conquerors, Alexander the Great, made reference to his purple cloak while addressing his mutinous troops at Opis in 324 BCE. The color's association with royalty was so entrenched that laws in Rome restricted its use to the emperor and highest-ranking officials. The toga praetexta, edged in Tyrian purple, was worn by senior magistrates, while the toga picta, solid Tyrian purple with gold thread edging. Adorned generals celebrating triumphs also wore purple as well. By the 4th century AD, only the Roman emperor was permitted to wear Tyrian purple. In Renaissance art, purple often symbolized divine majesty and heavenly grace. Religious figures, particularly Christ and the Virgin Mary, were frequently depicted adorned in robes of purple, emphasizing their elevated spiritual status and authority. These representations reinforce the association of purple with divine favor and spiritual significance. That's all fine and dandy, but I'm sure purple must have some ties to negativity, right? Come on. Well, the closest thing to a negative response I got when researching the color purple was its association with domestic violence awareness. That is still very much a good thing. So perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps some colors do have an objective meaning. Perhaps purple's ties to good is
fundamental to the universe.
Thank you all for watching the video. Now, these are my final thoughts. This video was my project, my first ever long form video essay, and I want to say I've learned a lot from the experience. First of all, I've learned that making long form content is truly an ordeal. So I will never ever in my life say that this creator was taking too long to release a video. This thing is hard. It's work. It's hard work. But I'm going to say I'm happy I did it. I'm very, very happy I did it. I've learned a lot more about who I am and what kind of videos I actually want to make. So I hope you stick around for it, because my next set of videos are definitely going to show what I've learned about this process of making videos. I want to say a special thank you again to everyone who's watching, and the biggest of thank yous to One Eric YT. Thank you so much, man. You really did a lot for me in the process. Thank you. By the time this is going to be released, it's either going to be New Year or it's about to be New Year. So happy New Year to everyone who's listening to this. With this, I'm signing off.